Military veteran and Oath Keepers chapter president Ray Epps is free. Epps was sentenced to a year of probation for participating in the 2021 Capitol riots yesterday. Epps also received a $500 fine and was ordered to serve 100 hours of community service. Last week, prosecutors had recommended 6 months of jail time for Epps. Reporter Greg Price wrote on X, Ray Epps, the only January 6 protester who actually told people to go into the Capitol, has been officially sentenced to 1 year probation, $500 restitution, and 100 hours of community service. While many J6 protesters are rotting in jail for nonviolent crimes, Epps escapes a prison term entirely. Here's footage of Epps from that day.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed.
Meanwhile, new footage released by the Justice Department shows a heated exchange between 2 Republican congressmen and Capitol rioters on January 6th. Let's watch.
I'm at the Capitol. Why is inside the building? We're trying to get in. We got the glass broken. These are all your paychecks. Are they in there? This is our house. This is our house.
Our house. How do you handle this? Open the door, brother. How do you handle it? Come on, man. Open the door.
They're socialist pigs. You're gonna kill patriots who put this war together. What's wrong with you?
Now, that last video was shot by Damon Beckley, who was found guilty of obstructing the Electoral College certification and civil disorder by a federal judge, per CNN. Meanwhile, the White House has slammed former President Donald Trump for referring to January 6 rioters as hostages during a speech over the weekend. Trump called on President Biden to, quote, release the J6 hostages, and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre responded, it is grotesque to make those kinds of comparisons.
I will just again note that if Donald Trump considered them hostages or political prisoners, and this was so important to him, he could have freed them while he was still president in his last few days, as many of his very conservative supporters urged him to do so. He declined to take that action.
Yeah.
Make of that what you will.
What I make of that is that the Republican Party was embarrassed and humiliated and slinking around like a dog with its tail between its legs in the wake of January 6th. There's been a lot of revisionism going on right now, but a lot of folks who are also echoing that hostage language, like Vivek Ramaswamy, tweeted immediately after January 6th that it was a shameful event and the Republican Party needed to do some introspection. Now, we're here all of these years later where there's this effort to rehabilitate what happened. But even frankly, watching the video, I know we're supposed to be focused on Ray Epps calling for people to go into the Capitol, but the argument is undermined by seeing a throng of people push over barricades, assault police officers, and force their way into the Capitol. It's hard to reduce what happened on 1/6 to the actions of one man, or say that his saying out loud that we should go into the Capitol and that was the clear desire and intent of thousands of people as they push past the barricades. It seems a little reductive.
Well, I agree, but I think the criticism is that Democrats and the media have tried to do exactly that with respect to Donald Trump, put it all on one man.
Sure.
When in fact, this was a chaotic, confused day involving thousands of protesters, many of them who did absolutely nothing wrong, who were just engaging in First Amendment protected activity, some who unquestionably violated the law, like the people we just saw on camera. Anyone who knocked down barricades, fought with cops, smashed windows, went into the Capitol in such fashion should absolutely have been arrested and prosecuted, and I have no opposition to that. Those people are not hostages. We must be a party, as Donald Trump conceded at one point, of law and order. That is purportedly important to Republicans, so I don't have any problem with that. I do understand why some, again, while still acknowledging that there is no evidence that, or none has been presented to me, if you have some, show it. Show us the evidence. People can't just make claims and not have anything to back it up. But I understand people finding it fishy that a man on camera repeatedly over and over again saying we should, telling people to go into the Capitol, being called out. That's the funny thing, being called out by all the people around him, saying because the person, if you're in far-right activist circles, the person inducing you to commit crimes is sometimes someone being paid by the government to do so, as was the case in the Gresham Whitmer.
That's also what you can say about Donald Trump, that the person calling for people to march to the Capitol and telling them that the rights are being stripped away inside is the one that's culpable. And in defense of Donald Trump, and I think rightly so, his speech, it should not be criminalized on the day of 1/6. So I just frankly don't think you can have it both ways. I agree with you. There's an interesting parallel between how Democrats are framing Donald Trump and how Republicans are framing Ray Epps. But I think it's appropriate in neither case to say that we need to throw the book on the person who happens to have been loudest and caught on camera, as opposed to the people who actually committed the violence, who are serving sentences on average of only 2 months.
Prosecutors have treated Ray Epps with kid. I mean, in the document for sentencing, they talked about how his life was ruined and how it's so sad for him.
I mean, it was. Robby.
He's not serving a day in prison.
But do you deny that he has been the focus of a multi-year right-wing conservative attack that's been very prominent on Fox News, with people like Tucker Carlson calling him out, specifically calling him an op and a Fed in ways that have not been substantiated.
People
by
were calling him a Fed at the time,
and that he's had concerns about his safety and the like as a consequence of those attacks.
I'm just telling you why many conservatives have questions about his involvement and whether there was something not quite above board there.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go down that road. Not you, but if conservatives want to go down that road and play those games, because it really is identical to what's happening with Donald Trump, except at a smaller scale. And if you want to go down the path of saying that the person who was loud with their speech on the day that something happened is the most culpable, as opposed to the people who actually committed the malfeasance.
Ray Epps did use the words "go into the Capitol" repeatedly. Donald Trump, now I think his rhetoric was reckless and inflamed the crowd, and you can assign moral blame to him for what happened. He did not instruct the protesters to engage in violence or to enter the Capitol. He said, I mean, it was more vague than that. I'm not making excuses for it. You can think it was totally inappropriate. I certainly do. You can think it was an impeachable offense. But he did not specifically say go into the Capitol premises. He asked his people to march to the Capitol. He said he would be joining them. Didn't do that. But he said he did not. He did not. He said we should project strength. He did not. With using the direct language that Ray Epps did, tell people to go in. So anyway, we will be continuing to litigate January 6th for some time to come, I suspect, as it is the focus of all these Donald Trump-esque trials to some degree. And I don't think it's necessarily good for the Republican Party to be backward-looking toward it, but here we are.
It is also the focus of so much conservative media, who has made the decision, an unforced decision, a completely voluntary decision, to make the people that we just watched in those clips into heroes and to frame them as political prisoners.
I mean, I think that's a reaction to the mainstream media's framing of January 6th as akin to, and not just the media, frankly, but actually the prosecutors of people like Enrico Tarrio, as a kind of terrorist attack, as a psychic attack on the nation on par with 9/11. We watched Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC the other day literally tearing up when forced to recall it. AOC crying about that day. I don't want to. It was a very bad day. It was a very embarrassing day for the nation and for Donald Trump, and lawbreakers should always be held accountable. But I think a sense of proportion is warranted and is sometimes not there on both sides for the people talking.
Right. Well, in this segment, we're talking about Republicans advocating for higher sentences for Ray Epps. That's the argument here, that Ray Epps should have a higher sentence because he's more culpable than others in this scenario because of the nature of his speech, or the loudness of his speech that day, and the fact that it was caught on camera. That does not sit well with me, but let us know what you think in the comment section. Stick around for more Rising after this.